Good afternoon. I'll call to order the June 2021 meeting of the New Ulm Public Utilities Commission. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes. I was looking for the notice of remote hearing. No longer on the agenda. So we'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on May 25th, 2021.
I'll second.
Any discussion of the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we want to recognize our Employee of the Month, Rachel Cunningham.
Yes, Commissioners, Rachel Cunningham is the laboratory technician in the wastewater department. She has been that since April 2009. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from the University of Minnesota and also holds a Class B wastewater license. Rachel keeps current on regulations and analysis procedures from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency accreditation program. She has consistently passed all annual proficiency testing and blind sample analysis required for certified wastewater lab personnel. She's an active member of the Minnesota Wastewater Operators Association, and she's currently on the MWOA Lab Committee and the MWOA Southwest Secretary Treasurer. So I want to offer congratulations to Rachel Cunningham.
Yes, thank you very much, Rachel. You have a motion
I'll offer the motion to recognize Rachel Cunningham, Laboratory Technician in the Wastewater Department, as Employee of the Month for May 2021.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we need to receive our financial report for the year end December 31, 2020.
Commissioners, there was a meeting held last Tuesday before the City Council meeting where ABDO presented the results of the 2020 fiscal year. There was an available or possibility to ask questions then. If you have other questions going forward, you can always let me know. And then just to let you know too, if you want any hard copies of those reports, to just let me know.
I'll make the motion to receive the annual financial report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2020 for the New Ulm Public Utilities Commission.
Second.
Any discussion of the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries. And now our monthly utility operations report.
Yes, there's just a few items that I want to highlight from the report. Just for your information, the fuel tank has been repaired, the settlement issues have been fixed, and new patches have been welded on the floor. So the fuel is back in the tank, and the gas turbines are back online as we speak. Also, the report was commissioned from Bolton and Mink for the structural review of the miscellaneous metalworks that we had at the plant. The report has been received in its final form, and the items have been categorized in terms of action time. We are in the final stages of getting quotes on those immediate items, and construction will start as soon as we can get secure the materials. We figure the upgrades on the immediate items are in the range of about $100,000, which will be payable through some of the funds that we received through the bonding process that we went through about a month or so ago. And all of the other items that were identified as second-tier items, those will be included in the 2022 budget. So, also, just as a note, letters now have been sent out to New Ulm customers on the service line warranties program. I don't think anybody has gotten them in the mail yet, but they should be to you sometime this week. We also sent out information through newspaper, cable access, social media, et cetera, making our customers aware that this is a program that they could access through the service line warranty website, or they can call the number on the mailer or on the website for more information. We also have that on our website. There'll also be a second mailing on or around July 2nd. Just as a reminder, this is a program that is offered through service line warranties. It is not a utility program, but we have partnered with Service Line Warranty, and it's a program that will allow warranty on your water and water and sewer service lines, so it will offer some help to people that potentially have a break in those lines. Our May and June newsletter has been mailed off. Hopefully you saw that, and the focus on that newsletter was on our STEAM and district energy, and we had a couple testimonies of some projects that were done that people were very happy with. So hopefully other STEAM customers will see that, and they'll come in and ask about our rebate program so that we can get some of that updated for them. The Wellfield FEMA project, the permits have been received, the money's been obligated, and the project will be brought to the commission for bid acceptance at the July meeting. And the other FEMA project, the electric distribution boring project, that has been obligated as well. It's been bid, and the estimated start date on that project is July 7th. The raw water line replacement started June 7th. The pipe is in. And as of today, they were filling it and doing the first bacteria test to be completed, the first of 2. And the estimated completion is sometime within a week or a week and a half for that project. And I think the final thing I just wanted to note was on the anniversary dates for our employees. Just want to recognize Dave Keene from the electric production department. He's a power plant supervisor. He's celebrating 42 years of service, which is a significant amount of time. So just wanted to mention that. Other than that, if you have any other questions, you can certainly ask.
I'll offer the motion to receive and order filed the report regarding monthly utility operations.
I'll second.
Any discussion of the motion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries. And the next item is to receive a water and wastewater cost of service and rate design study report.
Yes, President Heine, Commissioners, Karen Cavett from SEH is here. She's going to present a review of the water and wastewater study that was completed. The current water rates that we have been in effect since January 1 of 2014, and the current wastewater rates have been in effect since February 1st of 2013. Believe at the June 23rd, 2020 Commission meeting, you authorize the city manager to accept the proposal from SEH. This is the proposal or the report that you'll be seeing today. The purpose of this study was to review and analyze the current rates for the water and wastewater utilities and to make any recommendations that will modify the rates. So it's based on a cost of service allegation and then also the revenue requirements of the utility. The study provided recommendations to the utility over a 5-year period. And this is to maintain the operational stability and to have adequate cash flow. So the following rate adjustments are recommended to go into effect with the February 1st, 2022 billing. So with that, I'd like you to welcome Karen Cavett from SEH.
Thank you very much. I'm Karen Cavett, Short Elliott Hendrickson, SEH. We started this probably about a year ago almost, taking a look at the rates for the community. And so kind of going to walk through what we found, some background information so you can understand the formation of the rates, what we're looking at, the objectives of the report, what we really want to achieve with these rates, and then looking at the structures themselves and how it impacts the users on the system, all the different customers from residential to commercial to industrial. And then finalizing that, we will have some recommendations for you to consider. And so first I'm going to just jump into your existing rate structure for water so you kind of understand where you're coming from right now. The structure that you have was approved in 2012. I think as was stated here in 2014, I think there was one increase, but otherwise it's been staying pretty much constant at the current rates it's at. The structure consists of a fixed base rate, and then it has a commodity or usage rate, a cost of per 1,000 gallons that is used. That base rate is based on meter sizes. And so for when you look at a residential homeowner, typically their meter size is 5/8 to 3/4 inch. And that's what the majority of the homeowners have for a meter size. And that's considered one equivalent unit, that one homeowner is using the water for that unit. For commercial industrial, we typically see they have much larger connections, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. And for there, we have a meter equivalent. And we look at what is the usage for those meters and what is it equivalent to. So for instance, you'll see here for the 2 inch, the equivalent is 2.9. And that means approximately 2.9 homeowners could be connected for that same size. So they're taking up that capacity. So if you remove that customer, we could put almost 3 homes onto the system. And so we're trying to figure out a way to make it fair. And this is the current system you have, and it's worked well. Right now, the customer classifications include residential. You have large and small commercial, municipal, and industrial. And the rate structures are based around these customers and their usage. And the commodity charge is 2, and this goes back to the DNR. Probably over a decade ago, they did require communities to use conservation rates. They wanted to see conservation being a key factor for all communities. And so the 2-tiered system complies to that requirement by the DNR. The first tier is a lower tier. We're encouraging people to use the lower quantity of water. And then when they hit a threshold, that's when the increase, the rate costs. It costs more to use it, to encourage that they stay below a certain threshold. It's something that the DNR has strongly encouraged. They have several different types of rate systems. The one you have, again, was in place in 2012, and it's worked well for the community. We definitely do see that your rates reflect the conservation, or the usage does. And then for the sanitary sewer structure, it's real similar to the water in that you have a base rate, a fixed amount, and then you have the commodity use, the cost per 1,000 gallons again. A little bit different than the water is that the base rate is the same for all customers, and this includes the city of Cortland. The city of Cortland does send their wastewater to the city of New Ulm, but they do not use the water, so they're only charged for sanitary sewer. And so for all the other users here, they do have the base cost, and then it's the cost per 1,000, and it's just a straight cost. We don't have a tiered system for the sanitary. And one area where we do have a little bit of a break between the residential, municipal, and commercial, they all pay the base and the usage, but the industrial pays an additional surcharge, and it's for nutrient removal, where it's above and beyond that domestic strength, where it takes more energy to remove it, more chemicals to remove it, more labor to remove it. And so there is a charge for that when it's above and beyond that domestic strength. And so that is addressed in here, and we did take a look at the rates there to make sure that we're properly charging for the removal of the nutrients. And so for developing the rates, we look at kind of the baseline. What is the population and the flows currently right now, and what do we project out for the next 5 years? And then we look at the connections, the number and type of connections, because that's how we're going to raise the revenue, and it's through these different customer classifications. And so the first thing we looked at was population projections, and you'll see that between 2010 and 2020, there is a drop in population. And it's kind of misleading because if you look at the last few years, there was a large increase in housing. However, the number of people per home decreased. It went from 2.36 to 2.14. And because of that decrease, even though you had the housing increase, you had that decrease in overall population. And it's a population that really drives the usage for water and water flow. So to be conservative, looking at what we saw for future growth and looking at what we saw happening with communities similar to New Ulm, where we see that dropping, that population per home decreasing, we really felt it was best just to keep it neutral. That we don't really see it increasing, we don't see it decreasing. We kept it the same population moving forward for the next 5 years. We felt that was probably the most conservative way to move about it. I don't think the number of people per homeowner is going to drop a whole lot more. We have seen it go down to about 2.1. In looking at the county records, it's everyone's guess, so this is our best estimate based on the data that we were provided. And then we looked at water usage. And one thing that was really nice about New Ulm is the last 5 years, as you can see here, each line is a year here. In the last 5 years, you really don't have an anomaly where 1 year is really off, where you have really high water usage or really low water usage or a peak in a month. It's pretty consistent, where you see the slight peak in the summer months where you have the irrigation, but it really is nice how closely they follow. When we looked at this, 2019 is the year we kind of zeroed in on because it was your most recent for number of connections. We kind of avoided the COVID year because this last year was kind of an anomaly. It wasn't a real good year to pull data from. So we went to 2019 as being the most recent. And then you'll also notice too that the flow was about 575 million. So it's a little bit lower than the previous years. It's about 1% less than the flow from 2018. But we felt if we're going to be receiving revenue from this, we wanted to go with the lower number than the higher number because we want to make sure we capture that revenue. We don't want to be short at the end of this, at the end of each fiscal year. And then the next, here you can kind of see how it breaks down between residential, small commercial, large, industrial, municipal. The flows themselves for the last 3 years, very consistent between the 3 years, which is nice to see. One thing that's very interesting here is if you look at the residential, the flow here is about 230 million a year versus large industrial is about 193. But when we look at the number of connections, moving to the next slide here, the number of residential connections is just under 4,800. Whereas industrial, we're looking at 14. So it kind of gives you an idea of how much flow that industrial is really, the capacity they're really taking from both your water and your wastewater plant. And just to give you kind of a visual of that, so you can see the breakdown. The water is sold by customer. Residential is about 38%. What is unique is that New Ulm has a really strong industrial commercial base. Typically, we see it closer to 50-50 or maybe 60-70% residential. So you have a really nice base, which is, I think, every community would be jealous of, to tell you the truth. So this is really, really nice to see. And then if we look at the sanitary, there is something I did want to point out here is as we were going through all the records, we looked at the influent to the wastewater treatment facility, and you'll see that it ranges from about 835 million for the year to a high of 964 million. So that's the metered flow entering the wastewater treatment plant. But the metered water from the homes going to the treatment plant are only make up about 60% of that. You're right around the 600 million. 41% of the flow going to the wastewater plant is inflow and infiltration. So it's coming from leaky pipes, roof drains, sump pumps, that type of thing. And so just want to make you aware of that because that's water that's treated that really shouldn't be in the system. It costs money to treat the rainwater and the groundwater. So that was something I did want to bring to your attention. And the last column, we show the water billed at the wastewater, for the wastewater plant. And that is going to be less than the water metered because what we do is we look at the flow from April to November. From November to April. It's the winter months where we don't have any irrigation, where we don't have people filling pools, watering gardens. We want to capture the flow that's actually going to go to the wastewater plant. Those summer months when they're watering the facility or the plants, it's not going to go to the plant itself. So that's why we use those months to really capture what is being treated at the facility. And again, if you do the breakdown here, you'll see that the residential is 42%, and then industrial and commercial is a little bit less, but it follows the water fairly closely, the breakdown. And so we look at what we used for the evaluation of rates. We used the data from 2019. We felt that 2020 with COVID and people working from home and changes with industry that it just wasn't a really good year to use. So 2019 is the year that we went with for the data, looking at connections. It also was a lower flow year, so we felt we were being conservative so that we will make sure that we meet our budgets at the end of each year. That's extremely important. And then we also did take a look at and identify, the billing system, the customer type for accuracy to make sure that the users are right in their right category, that we have residential and commercial and industrial, that the customers who are connected to the system are accurately in their customer category. And then finally, the rate model incorporates the rates approved in 2014, and then we do have a couple minor changes to the structure that would occur in 2022, and we'll talk about those changes here. Before we get into the rates, we did have some objectives too, and one was to make sure that we have fair and equitable rates for all customers. That was really important. The second was to promote the water conservation in accordance with the Minnesota State statute. That is set by the DNR, and with your increased rate structure, you are meeting that requirement. So we did stay with the structure that was approved. It's what the customers are used to. It is working very well. Typically, what DNR likes to see is that the water usage per homeowner is under 75 gallons per person a day. And right now, the community here is right between 55 and 60, so you're sitting really nicely. And then also, we did look at the utility operating and capital expenditures. We went through several iterations to make sure, how do we pay for everything? How do we do it equitably? And look at when certain items are going to occur so it doesn't hit the rates and the homeowners and businesses as hard. And then we developed that financial plan. You know, we based a cost-based rates, looking at this is the expenditures, now we need to cover it. And then finally, we want to make sure that our financial reserves, and this is the big one, that our reserves are adequate to provide that operation stability. So we want to know at the end of the year that that cash balance is what we need to cover debt, cover operation. And there are some requirements, we'll go over that. And we did make sure that those were met. And then if we look at the water structure first, so moving into how are we going to meet the costs that are going out, we really wanted to stay with the existing structure. There are a number of different ways to do conservation, and I think you looked at that pretty in-depth back in 2012, and the system that you have in place is working well for you, so there's really no reason to do a complete change just to do the change when what you have is working well. So we stayed with that, with the increasing block, and basically for wastewater, for the water, it's a 25% increase from your base rate, Tier 1, 25% increase to Tier 2. Very common. We see that throughout the state. It's pretty common in Minnesota to have that type of increase. The residential, we set the usage at 5,000 gallons, and I'll show you why. And it's what was set up before. Looking at the data, the use, it currently is where you really need to be to. So we did not change that. The average water use for each home on the system is about 3,910 gallons a month. When you go to communities to similar size to here, we see it anywhere between 3,500 and about 4,500. So you're right in the middle. You get up into the metro, you'll see 6,000, 7,000 because they're watering their lawns all the time and they have a lot of swimming pools. Completely different. And so this is a nice graph that kind of shows how the residents are using the water in the community. If you look at the bottom of the graph here, from 0 to 30, that's how many gallons per month a residential connection uses. So if we were to go at 2, that's 2,000 gallons a month, and you go to the left, 10%. So that tells you that 10% of the residents use 2,000 or less gallons a month. If we slide over to the 4, that's 4,000 gallons a month, and we go up to that blue line, an average of about 40% of the homeowners use 4,000 gallons a month or less. So we're adding it up as we go to the right. And you'll see as we get to where we have a line at the 5, which is 5,000, you're going to see that those 3 lines start to diverge. You have the gray line, which is cold weather usage, and the bottom line, the orange line, which is warm weather usage. They start to diverge, and you get to see that difference. What happens is in the cold weather, at 5,000, you have about 63% of the residents are using 5,000 gallons or less a month. But when you go down to the orange line in the summer months, when everyone's watering, that drops to about just under 50% are using 5,000 gallons or less. And as you move further to the right, you'll see those lines tend to separate even more. And that was why that 5,000 was selected. It's kind of the halfway point. You're right around 50% of the population. And you can see as you go to the right, we really do want to see a little bit more conservation, and that's why the rates are higher for that, to the right of that 5,000 gallons. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we looked at customer classifications. This is one change we did make. For 2020 and 21, you'll see that we have municipal in there still. That is broken down as the customer class. And when we're looking at that, they're really not treated any different than a commercial. It's the same water usage. And so what we decided to do was to take the municipal away. So for 2022 and 2025, we moved the municipal over into small and large commercial, where it really belonged. Because that way we could charge the municipal based on if they're equal to a large commercial user or a small commercial user. It just made more sense. So that did remove one classification. And so if you look at the total number of connections, for single family, we had no increase or decrease in population or flow. The number of connections remained the same. For small and large commercial, you'll see in 2022 there is a slight increase, and that's because municipal was moved over. And then for industrial, that remained the same. And now if you look at the base, the fixed rate for meter equivalent, and this is based on meter size. So as I said before, the 5/8 inch and 3/4 inch is typically residential, and we compare everyone else on the system to that residential user. They're your largest user on the system. You know, there are almost 4,800 connections there that make up that. And what we did is we took a look at the number of meters, which is that top line here, which you have 5,110 of the 5/8 and 3/4 to 3/4 inch, and then you have the 1 inch, 1.5 inch. And we looked at what the average water use was per meter per month, and that's the white line going across. We divided that by the number of meters, and it gave us the meter equivalent, what is actually happening out in your system. And so you'll see that for the 1 inch, you're at 2.6, 1.5, 9, 2 inch to 22. And this is the average, so you're going to have a lot under it, and you're going to have a few over it. So it's the medium. What you're currently set on is the AWWA meter equivalent. It's this current system that you have right now. It's the bottom green, or the yellow line there. And we decided to stay with that because when you look at the actual meter equivalents, you're going to have a lot that are really below it. You're going to have a few that are above it. It's just the average. And to move and just switch automatically from that 2.9 to 22 for a 2 inch, that's a huge jump. And is it really realized for all those connections? It really is not, because it is an average again. So staying conservative, staying with the system you have, and it's working well. So we did not change that. And this is the big one. This is kind of the bottom goal, is their cash reserves. Where do we end up with the rates? We really want to have 6 months of operation covered. So you'll see for the water line going across there, it's around 1.2 to just under 1.5 million a year is 6 months of operation costs for the water. The capital, going through the CIP, this was looked at very intensely. We went through, moved things around, tried to keep it so that we are moving forward with capital improvements, but in such a way it doesn't greatly impact the rates all at one time or early on, that we can spread it out over the 5-year period. And so you'll see that that's right around 290 to a little over, just under 500,000. And then the debt payment, that's existing debt that's existing. So we're looking at the payments here, and the total cash reserve we need is the addition of 1 year of debt payment, 1 year capital expenditures, and then 6 months of operation. So for the water, you're looking at right around 2 million for a cash reserve. For the wastewater, typically wastewater costs a little bit more to treat, and the processes are a little bit more expensive, and so it isn't unusual to see that being 50% more than what the water costs are. And you're right around 3 million to 3.4 million for a cash reserve for that. And that's the goal. You may not hit that every year, but that's the goal that you want to get towards. So when you end up at year 2025, that you're near that goal is really what we want to see, that you're not short and you're not way over it, that you're not putting away too much, having rates too high, and you're not putting away not enough, or you're not going to meet your requirements, especially if you want to take out any loans or financing. You want to make sure you have that cash reserve. And so the overall rate structure that we have for the water is a base fee. So we kept that. The base fee includes costs for administration, meters, billing, collections, some of the labor. It's what's really needed to keep that plant going, whether you have 50,000 gallons going through or 100,000 gallons going through. There are certain expenses you occur no matter what. The commodity fee are costs that are related more to the operation and maintenance of it. If it's your electrical will go up as your flows go up, your chemical costs go up, and it's relating to really what we see related to as usage increases. Those items attached to it are going to increase. For wastewater, biosolids will increase as flow increases. So we take a look, divided the cost between those two. And then we also want to look at a stable rate. So once we get that, we look at where are we falling. We don't want to have everything in the base rate, that you have 90% in the base rate and only 10% in the commodity, because no one's going to conserve, and it really hits that low-end user hard because they're not using much water, yet they're paying as much as someone who's going to use an awful lot of water. The inverse of that is if we have a really small, fixed rate where, let's say you're only doing $2 there, but everything is on usage. Let's say you have a really wet year and hardly anyone uses water. Now you're going to be in a deficit because you really don't have that balance. And so it allows, having that 50-50 split when you look at residential, it allows you to kind of keep that conservation rate where people do want to conserve. And then it also allows you to have that stability where you're going to have an income coming in that isn't all related on usage. That's a little risky to do that. So what we looked at after we did the base and the commodity, were we close to that 50-50? Just kind of a check, where are we with that? The cash reserve, again, it was a goal to achieve it over the next 5 years. And then the rate increases, we wanted to minimize the annual impact to customers through a phased approach. Again, we didn't want to hit them up really hard that first year. And then for the water, we did maintain the existing rate structure. It seemed like it really was working well for the community. No reason to change it. And then, so the base rate, again, keeping it based on meter size, and the meter equivalents, as we discussed earlier. So no change in your current structure there. The customer classifications, that was reduced from 5 to 4, where we got rid of the municipal and moved that into commercial. For the sanitary side, again, we kept the fixed base rate plus the cost per 1,000 gallons. And it's the same for all customers, including the city of Cortland. So what someone pays for in the city of New Ulm, someone living in Cortland will be paying the same amount for treatment here. And then if you look at the commodity charge for sewer, it still is not tiered. It's just a flat rate per 1,000 gallons. And then we did take a look at the industrial, commercial, residential. That we kept the base rate and the cost per 1,000, the structure the same, and the costs went up accordingly. For the industrial, we did see, going through the study, that the nutrient removal, we did need to address that. And that's probably where the biggest change in rates came, is that what it costs to remove that BOD, the total suspended solids, the phosphorus, we really took a look at that, what it is per pound for removal. Same structure, but that's where you're probably going to see some change. The expenditures, again, went through everything closely with staff. Expenditures for the water, right about 3.5 million is 3.4 million is pretty common from 22 to 25. And it's broken down to operation and maintenance costs, capital improvement, and debt service. For the sewer fund, it's the exact same. Again, we looked at the operation and maintenance costs, right around that 3.5 million. Capital improvements, and you'll see for year 2020, there's a zero there. And that's because there is a reserve that was paid to EP funds, about 1.5 million, and those funds will be used to fund those improvements. So it's kind of a wash. What's going out is coming in, so we didn't put that into the rates because no one has to cover that in the rate, and captured in the rates. And then the debt service remains at just under 800,000 for the next 4 years. So the total for the wastewater is anywhere from about 4 million to just over 5 million for expenditures. So if we look at the changes, what is proposed for the water rates, the existing base rate is $10.10. And what we propose is raising it $2 per year for the next 4 years. So going from $10.10 to $12 to $14 to $16 to $18. And so how that impacts non-residential is that the meter equivalent would be multiplied by that. So if you have a connection that is a 2-inch connection, they'd be paid 2.9 times the $12 for 22. For 25, it'd be 2.9 times the $18. So you can see how over the next 4 years, for instance, a 2-inch would go from $34.80 to $52.20. And then for residential, for the usage, very small increase. This is for up to 5,000 for Tier 1. Basically, it's a 2-cent increase per 1,000 gallons from the current to year 22, and then that would remain the same, no additional increases. And then for the over 5,000, we have $4.73, and that basically is 25% higher than Tier 1, which is industry standard that we see. You either do 25% or you can do it, exaggerate it, which is a 50% increase. You've been using the 25%, and we stayed with that because it's working for you. There's no reason to really increase it anymore. For that one, it's just a 2% increase, again, from 2021 to 2022. Most of the change was seen in that base rate because the fixed costs, really more of the costs that we're seeing are attributed to that base cost, and that's why that increased so much, and this really did not. And then for small commercial, so small commercial, Tier 1 is 10% less than Tier 1 for residential. And this is how it was set up originally, and one of the reasons for this is if you look at, when you look at commercial, and when we get to industrial, you'll see that that percentage will drop again, is because when you have commercial, they're not so much using it for irrigation, they're using it more for their processes and what they're doing. So there's a slight increase, but they still do use some for irrigation. So this is a way not to ding them quite so bad, but when you get into these commercial, the small, medium, and then industrial, they're using the water more. They're using it more than just a regular residential person. And so they're paying for that infrastructure because of the long-term use of it. They're not using it just in the morning before they go to work and when they come back in the evening. They're using it throughout the day. And so there's revenue collected on that infrastructure that's out there continuously. And that's why you'll typically see that for industrial and commercial, those rates are a little bit less. And then the large commercial here too, you'll see that it's real similar, but the tier has been moved. So from 9,000 gallons, it goes up to 100,000. Again, this is very much process driven. We want to make sure that they have the room to do what they need to do. But if they go above a certain amount, we really attribute that then to irrigation, to watering, to other uses outside. And then industrial, here, the majority of it is all used for the process itself. And so we're only looking at, it's 20% lower than residential, and then Tier 1 is only 5% higher than Tier 1, so it's a very small increase. This is currently what you have, and it makes sense based on the usage. We did some graphing looking at where the water usage changes, where we see it change seasonally, and it really lined up nicely with what you have here. So we really didn't see any reason to change the gallons where the cutoff is from Tier 1 and Tier 2. For industrial, you'll see that it's quite a high tier. It's 556,000 gallons per month. For the sanitary, here was a little bit different. In order to balance the funds, we had to do the increase all in the first year for the connection charge. So we went from $6.75 to $10. Once we got up to $10, we were able to keep it at that and not increase it anymore. We tried increasing it incrementally, but we were kept going negative in those first few years, and so we really needed to get that revenue coming in earlier than later. We were able for the cost per thousand, the monthly commodity charge, to keep that the same with no changes to that. Again, where we saw that the increase really needed to be was on that base charge again. That was low, more of the fixed costs were falling under that, and that's why the costs were attributed to the base. One of the things that we have here for the industrial that I wanted to point out is that the cost for nutrient removal, we did schedule that over the whole 5 years, and particularly for the phosphorus, that was the one where we saw the largest increase. Right now it's at $4.10 per pound for removal, and it really should be closer to just over $5. And so we have that increase incremented in over the next 4 years, increasing proportionally and slowly over each year so that the industries have time to adjust for that. So they know the bill is going to be accommodating this. And this is the real cost that it costs the utility in the city to remove those nutrients from the system. And this is kind of a check to see with these rates, how are we falling in? How are we meeting that ending cash balance? That's our goal. That bottom line is our goal. And from 2021 through 2025, you'll see that the beginning balance is at about 2.09 million is our beginning, and our ending cash balance is 1.936 with revenue and then expenditures. We're holding fairly steady there. And then you'll see what the desired reserve is we're following it fairly closely. 2022, we do have some additional expenses, but overall, it really works out pretty nice. You'll see that the ending cash balance in 2025 is about as close as we can get to that desired reserve. So staging it in with the water works nicely. Basically, it's a $2 increase every year for that base rate. For the sewer fund balance, you'll see that our ending cash balance is right around 3.7 to 3.4 million by 2025, and that falls right in line with where we would like to see the cash balance. And remember, the desired cash balance is going to vary every year, and it's based on your operation, 6 months, your debt, and then your capital improvement plan. So it's not going to stay consistent. It won't always go up. It'll go up and down. Seeing what we're projecting, it falls in line really nicely. So how does it impact the residents? And so we start looking at the customers on the system. 5,000 gallons, about 56% of the residential homeowners use 5,000 gallons or less. And so right now, the existing bill is about $29 per month. That would go up to $31 a month, and then increase $2 per year thereafter. And then you can kind of see the 10,000 and 15,000, the more that's used, really a very small $2 increase across the board. For sanitary, again, looking at 56% of the users using 5,000 or less. Existing is $27.85. Year 2022 goes up to $31.10. So I think that's about a $3 and a little over a $3 increase. And then for the 10,000, again, another 28%. So now you're at about 74% of the total population is at $84.85 or less. It would go up to $52.50. And then we have no other increases from there on. For the sanitary, we'll be looking at just that one adjustment in 2022. We pulled the top 3 commercial customers just so you could see who has the highest water use and how it impacts them. So, these are the top of the top. And so the current, the number one user right now pays just over $14,000 a month in water. And so 2022, we're looking at $15,071. So again, it's a pretty reasonable increase considering how long it's been since there has been one. And then as we go down to the sanitary, again, for the number one user, going from $82,852 to $86,509. And then eventually, for 2025, for sanitary, you're looking at $93,409. And again, that's a top commercial user.
Excuse me.
Yep.
So with those sanitary sewer rates, does that include the suspended solids, the BODs, in that analysis as well?
The commercial users don't have that, but the industrial do.
So that's what I mean,
Yeah.
with the industrials.
Yeah, so with industrial, so the commercial here, this is just the fixed rate and then the cost per 1,000 gallons.
Okay.
This grouping here now, you'll see where the industrial users
Okay,
are. So
sorry.
we have that increase for BOD, TSS, and phosphorus. So we pulled what their typical loadings are and then did a comparison. So we picked all the top industrial, went through each one of them separately. And you'll see that for the number one industrial user, water consumption user here, for 2021, the average bill is about $94,306. So for 22, we're looking at about a $3,500 increase. 2023 and 2024 and 2025, here we're just looking at the increase, and that's basically related to the nutrients. And for 2025, we'd be increasing them to $98,577. So over that, the annual increase is about 1.1%. And it took a lot of work to get here, I'll tell you. The first time we did it was much higher. And as we looked at expenses and capital improvements and staging of projects, we were able to really bring this down. So it took a lot of finagling. And I think it's a really nice representation because all the main customers here for industrial and even the commercial and residential, it's a very fair increase for everyone, I think. If we look at the sanitary sewer, here we're looking at the $3 or 302,000 for 2021. And I'm sorry, this one was water. This was that base rate. Sorry. And the sewer, this is where we see the increase. And this increase here is heavily related to the loadings. And because of that, you are going to see where the increase for sanitary is a little bit higher than the water. And that's because we had to do a little bit more of adjustment for the cost for the nutrient removal. That was a little bit lower. And, one of the reasons is, I think when we look at expenditures, chemical costs and power are two that have probably gone up the most. And those are directly related to nutrient removal. And so that's why we see that higher increase where it isn't the 1.1, but we're at 1.8 to 3.2%. And then comparing the rates for New Ulm, the proposed rates to communities in the area, where do you fall? And I want to say, you should never look at what someone else is paying. Look at what your needs are. I really hate putting this page up, but I do want you to see that you really are not high, you're not low, you're right where you need to be. If you're low, I would worry because something isn't right. You need to do a lot of work. If you're really, really high, it usually indicates that you just had a lot of work done. You had a major capital improvement done. Just to kind of give you an idea of what the Public Facilities Authority, they look at what is affordable for a community. And so for water, they take 1.2% times the median household income. And so I did pull for New Ulm, the median household income here for 2019 is listed at just over $61,000. And so that 1.2% times that, what they would consider an affordable rate for a residential user is $61.60. So you're at $37, very affordable. And typically when we see these higher rates, when you get down to Le Sueur, St. Peter, it's construction, where they've had some major rehab, they've had new nutrient requirements at the waste plant or the water plant. When you see that new construction, that's when you're going to see those higher dollar ends, because the funding doesn't kick in below that affordability. Once you get to what is considered affordable, then the state does have means to kind of help bring down those costs. And for wastewater, it is even a little bit different for wastewater. It's 1.4 times that. So for wastewater, you're looking at $71.86 is what's considered affordable. So when you look at your total bill for water and sewer is at $68.10, it's a pretty nice comparison. I mean, you're pretty lucky. There's a lot of communities who would like to be in your shoes, that's for sure. So the next steps for 2022, for the water end, the next step would be to increase the base rate and commodity rates for all water. And then for 23, 24, and 25, it'd be just increasing the base rate. And we had $2 per year is the recommended right now based on what we projected out. For sewer, it's a little bit different here. We have the increased base and industrial loading changes. The commodity charge, we did not change. So for the first year, looking at changing the base and then industrial charges, and then to continue to increase the industrial loading charges for the next 3 years from 23, 24, and 25. And again, that's based on our projections. We have the spreadsheets, everything's going to be given to Chris. So every year you can go in and you can adjust what were our actual flows. Did we have additional growth? So do our flows go up? And that would capture more revenue. So you can put in your revenue that was actually seen and see where you fall each year. It's kind of nice to be able to do that. And then you can also look at revenue. Did you have something, or expenses, did something break down that you weren't expecting to break down? How is that going to affect the rates from here on out? That can easily be added into the worksheets. So for recommended, actions in the future here is to adopt the report at the next PU meeting, or the next meeting I think you're holding in December, is to accept the report. And then to approve the recommended 2022 rates and use the 2023 and 2025 suggested increase as a benchmark for the budgeting process. And then to incorporate the first phase of the fee charges in the 2022 fee ordinance, and then it'd be phased over the 4 years. So it's kind of lays out what the next 4 or 5 years for the city would see for increases. I went through an awful lot. And you probably have some questions.
So the first comment I have is for Chris, and just in general, our industries are going to be going through their budgeting process now. So now would be the time to, if we are considering moving forward with this, to communicate to those large industry groups so that they know what their rates are going to look like for these.
Yep.
for
Our
water and
intent
sewer.
is to, we're not approving the rates tonight, we're just going to accept and approve the report. And the intention is that the rates would be approved in December with the budget. However, in the next several months here before December, we're going to be having meetings with all of the industrial customers and talking about what those rates are going to look like for their next year. So we've got one scheduled already for next Monday.
Perfect. Yeah,
Yep.
because I know at least one industry that is probably doing them right now.
Yeah.
Doing the budget process right now.
Okay.
So that would be important information for them.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay. And then the question I had for you, as far as the different categories, the small residential, the large residential, industrial, or small commercial, large commercial, industrial, residential, did you, as part of your analysis, do any review of what's truly driving the cost between the different groups to make sure, understanding that we looked at usage to make sure that the pricing that that we charge will cover our costs, cover our debt service needs, cover our capital outlay needs? But did we look at what's truly driving the cost to make sure that we are allocating to the right groups the right amount if that group were to significantly change, that we don't all of a sudden create some giant windfall or create some giant hole because an industry picked up and left, and oh, by the way, we can't just pile the cost on someone else.
No, I mean, I guess if you had a major industry leave, right now, the way the costs are distributed, it's the base charge is based on those fixed costs, no matter what that unit is going to have to pay. So let's say you lose a major industry, there is going to have to be adjustment then to that base. And those are the fixed costs that we're looking at. The other end of it, which is the usage, that cost per 1,000 gallons, that is really broken down to what industry uses, what residential uses, but it's all based on domestic strength. So everyone is equal until you get to the industry. They have to pay that surcharge because it costs more. And that's where we really see the difference. When you look at commercial and residential, it really isn't much difference when you look at the cost to treat it. It's pretty similar because we ask they'll all be domestic strength. It all has to be under 250 parts per million. They have the same requirement. If they can't meet that, then they're paying that surcharge. They're paying extra for that. And they are metered, they are monitored, and so if they do go over, that is collected and addressed.
I noticed that we're processing about 30% more in the wastewater treatment plant than's metered. Is that typical, or is that more than normal?
For the, let's see here.
For the I&I
mean,
think
for
he's
the
talking
I&I?
about.
It's all over the board. I mean, I had, well, Kathy, my coworker's here, she worked at WLSD, and she said they had 200% I&I where she worked. Every community is different. When you have a river community, you have a community on the lake, you have older piping, you're going to see that high I&I. You know, knowing that you have that 41%, it's just an indicator that we need to, take a look at that to make sure the sump pumps are disconnected, roof drains are disconnected. Do we have a lot of clay pipe? Part of the study also looked at that, so it's kind of nice. An add-on to this is that we did look at where are some of those specific points in the system that we really should zero in on, try to reduce that I&I.
Yep, part of the report was a rehabilitation study, and so we've gotten the draft report from that already, which is going to identify the different types of material that's in the ground for water and sewer and the age of those pipes. The hope is at some point we can work with city engineering in identifying areas that maybe need to be done sooner than later, or the potential of, instead of replacing everything when we open cut it, that we do new trenchless technology so we can do more for less money. And so that's the second part of that. We recognize that seems high, and so that's on our radar to start working towards, trying to nibble that off as well.
Was that part of, we had that big sump pump
project.
That was exactly why
we're
we
address-
did that.
Right.
Yep.
Do we know if
exactly.
it's worse or better since, I thought we had a lot of success with,
I think
compliance?
I think it's improved some,
Okay.
but I think there's some areas of town that are some big contributors. There are also very difficult ones too, like the downtown area. There's a lot of the roof leaders that are going into the sanitary, so, yeah.
I have a question. You said a couple of times that our block rate system is really effective for conservation. How do we know that it's the rate that's improving conservation?
I guess that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, just seeing that you are at that 3,900. So a couple communities similar to your size, they're a little over the 4,000. They're about 4,500, 4,600. And I'm trying to compare communities that are really similar to you because each one is so different. So looking at the cities that are not in that metro area where they're more remote, which would be the listing that we had here. It might be Hutchinson, Red Wing, Winona. Looking at some of those communities, what is their usage, and seeing where you're at. It's either very effective or you have people who just don't want to water. I mean, but you're going to satisfy the DNR, and that's what's really important because if your flows were above that 75 gallons per person a day, they would be asking you to do more extreme measures. And because you're well below that, you don't have to worry about that. They might say instead of doing a tiered increase of 25%, we want to see 50% or 100%. They might make suggestions of how to get that usage down. But typically when we look outside the metro area, being below that 75 gallons per person a day is pretty common.
Well, and I think too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would also be just in the fact that we're not seeing huge increases in consumption. So, the tiered block is one of the tools in the toolbox. The other is, we have, when people are building homes, they're putting in, water saver shower heads and toilets and everything else. And so that's all contributing to keeping our sales down. It's, it's good for the DNR, but it's difficult for a
Yes.
utility, as costs are increasing, our sales are going down. But I think that can also be an indicator of that some of that stuff is working.
Yeah. I mean, 30 years ago when I started, in the industry here, it was 100 gallons per capita per day, and that was pretty standard. And because of the fixtures, because of the changes we've made in plumbing, seeing that to 60, 70, really common. In fact, some of the rural communities are even smaller that have very little usage. We've seen as low as 45. So, yeah, it really does make a huge difference.
So I would like to just make a comment on the process itself. The intent is, like I said, to bring this to the commission to approve the rates in December. We'll have these rates included in the budget when you guys see the budget in October. But the intention is just to do the first phase. Like Karen had said, we'll have the tools to be able to look at this on an annual basis so that if capital costs, somehow something happens and we see some capital costs that are more than what we projected to be, we'll have the ability to plug that in and see how that will affect rates. So it'll be more of a workable process going forward in the future. We'll be able to have the opportunity to bring that to you for every budget season for the next 4 years after, to approve the rates based on what our budget looks like and not necessarily on what a projection 2 or 3 years was, so.
Any other commissioners have questions? Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
So I'll make the motion to receive and order filed the presentation and report on the New Ulm Public Utilities water and wastewater cost of service and rate design study as prepared by Short Elliott Hendrickson Incorporated.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion of the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then under new business, we need to recognize, 2 more long-term employees?
Yes, we'd like to recognize Dwayne Wendler's years of service. He actually has retired after nearly 44 years of service. He started in the electric production department and then went to the gas department and finally ended his employment in the material distribution center as a storm operator. So he retired his position from the PUC on June 3rd of 2021.
I'll offer the resolution and waive the reading commending Dave Wendler, storeroom operator in the PUC Administration Department for nearly 44 years of service with the New Ulm Public Utilities Commission.
Second.
I think you said Dave, is it Dwayne?
Dwayne
Yes, sorry.
Wendler.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we can call the roll.
Commissioner Fingland?
Yes.
Commissioner Hillesheim?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaunis?
Yes.
Commissioner Visser?
Yes.
And President Heine?
Yes. And the resolution passes. And next, we have a resolution to consider for Terry Schneider.
Yes, Terry Schneider has retired as well after 8 years, actually, I'm sorry, 18 years with the wastewater department. She retired on June 4th of 2021.
I'll offer the resolution and waive the reading commending Terry Schneider, clerical assistant in the wastewater department, for serving the New Ulm Public Utilities Commission for 8 years in a part-time position and 18 years in a full-time position.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we can call the roll.
Commissioner Fingland?
Yes.
Commissioner Hillesheim?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaunis?
Yes.
Commissioner Visser?
Yes.
And President Heine?
Yes. The resolution passes. Next, we need to consider offering a resolution for the general obligation public utility revenue refunding bonds.
Commissioners, this is just kind of a preliminary step that we need to take before these bonds are sold. It will refund the 2000, I'm getting mixed up between the city and the PUC, the 2013
13.
bonds, in hopes that we'll get a much lower interest rate than what they are currently at.
Okay, I'll offer the resolution and waive the reading, authorizing the issuance and establishing the terms and conditions of sale and set sale date for August 17th, 2021 at 10 a.m. in the amount of $1,520,000 for general public obligation public utility revenue refunding bonds, Series 2021C.
A second.
Any discussion? Okay, we can call the roll.
Commissioner Fingland?
Yes.
Commissioner Hillesheim?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaunis?
Yes.
Commissioner Visser?
Yes.
President Heine?
Yes. Resolution passes. And then finally, we have our report of claims for this past month.
I will make the motion to accept the list of claims paid in the amount of $4,174,229.72.
I'll second.
Any discussion of the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Unless we have any other comments, we will be adjourned.